Well, I think that everything about it was a bit of a shock. Well, let's just qualify that for a wee second. Anybody who's been watching Kasper Schmeichel over these last few months, it won't have come as too big a shock that he's got a problem with his shoulder, because it became more and more glaringly obvious with each passing week, culminating, I think, in the goal that he lost at Kilmarnock. Hard to understand how Celtic's medical department weren't on top of this situation. I don't know. What I really found confusing was that as you said there, he chose to make this announcement in an interview with his dad for an American TV channel at a Champions League game, and doesn't even mention Celtic.
Aye.
I don't know. Do you know? Look, might be a million miles out here, but someone somewhere isn't doing their job. And it points to the kind of state of confusion that Celtic as a club seem to be in behind the scenes right now. How's it possible that this guy has been performing? You know, we had a story last night, didn't we, at the top of Hotline Live, that bad news for Mohamed Diomande at Rangers. Unbeknownst to anybody, his shoulder actually popped out his socket during the first half of the cup tie against Celtic. And he now is waiting to find out the full extent of the damage, whether or not he'll be back playing again before the end of the season. If it's been really badly dislocated and needs surgery, that's highly unlikely. That's Mohamed Diomande. So, if I'm not saying that he should be able to play on with a shoulder injury, but he should have a better chance of doing that than a goalkeeper. And especially a goalkeeper that was letting goals fly in left, right, and centre and look really suspect getting down to his left-hand side. If the guy, and I think we have to bear in mind here, this is a quite literally a sore one for Kasper Schmeichel. He could be looking, and probably is looking, at the end of his top-class career here. And that, we need to have a bit of empathy with the guy. But at the same time, either he wasn't being open and honest, or Celtic's medical department weren't across this, because for whatever reason, he started the season as the first choice for Brendan Rodgers. He remained first choice under Martin O'Neill first time round. He stayed first choice for Wilfried Nonse, and he's been first choice again in Martin's second coming as Celtic manager this season. If I was a manager, I'd be asking my medical department, how did nobody think to tell me that he's playing with a dislocated shoulder? I think it's utterly incredible. And I also found it, as I said, really strange that when the manner in which they announced this, because it was only a few days ago that Martin O'Neill was saying, well, he's not going to Ibrox because he was feeling a bit poorly, I think was the word. Poorly? His arm's hanging off. So I'm really struggling with this, and I'm sure that Martin O'Neill, if I'm perplexed by it, he must be absolutely astonished. But it does, for me, it points to something somewhere behind the scenes is far from right there. And it did look obvious. We're not goalkeeping experts, but you can tell when somebody is really toiling, and it was happening time and time again. He was so suspect at his left-hand side. And I've actually lost count the amount of goals that he should have done better with throughout that period. Now you understand why. He needs two operations, not just one. He needs two separate operations. So, yeah, I think from a Celtic perspective, Martin O'Neill will probably just be in a hurry now to move on. He's got Sinisalo, who's come in and is doing fine. And that's good news for Celtic going forward. But it does point to, in this bizarre season that we've had, where everybody's gone through a looking glass, it transpires that Celtic might have been playing for a few months of the season with a goalkeeper whose arms had gone.
Aye. Well, look, I mean, you can see as well, and even in just some of the photos that we've uploaded, he was going for balls with his wrong hand for ages, and it looked bizarre. And yeah. I mean, what do you make of it, Scott?
I totally agree.
Well, he clearly can't get his left arm up there. That's what you're looking at. That he can't get his left arm up, so he's having to go to his left-hand side, leading with his right hand. But that's a great picture to illustrate it. But I'm sure there's another 5 or 6 or 7 pictures
Oh,
out
aye.
there that would illustrate it the exact same way.
Yeah, and by the way, it wasn't just on his left side. I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Stuttgart game, he lost a bad goal going down
Down
his
his right.
as
Aye.
well. And it obviously it would affect both sides. It certainly does explain a lot. You're right, Jacko, that Kelly goal in particular, where he's kind of scrambling with the wrong arm to try and keep a ball out that should have been fairly routine for him. So you do feel for him in that sense. He has been struggling, toiling to make saves. But I mean, you're saying who's been honest, or who knows about it. I mean, Schmeichel said in that interview that he's been taking jags, taking pills, taking injections. That
So the
suggests to
medical
me,
department must have known.
Aye,
that suggests to me people at the club know exactly what's going on, but they've been willing to. Well, they obviously rate him so highly as the number one goalkeeper that whatever it takes, just get him out there, get him playing, which doesn't say much for Sinisalo when you think about it, which is surprising because, as you say, Sinisalo's come in and actually done pretty well for them. So it is a bit bizarre. Now, obviously, Celtic fans, I've seen a lot of them on social media today, happy with Kasper Schmeichel, calling him selfish, self-preservation, talking about making sure or trying to make sure he's ready for the World Cup, willing to do anything. And Celtic fans are obviously taking from that. He's saying that even if that's to the detriment of Celtic, losing goals. So fans, I think, understandably, when they listen to that, aren't they happy with it? And as you say, Jacko, I mean, probably the most bizarre thing of all, you touched on it, and I watched the full thing today. Not to mention Celtic once, and I just thought it was extraordinary. I mean, it was
really
like
curious. Aye.
it was. I mean, he's surely not been naive enough to think because it was CBS, like nobody in
It
Scotland.
wasn't going to come back here.
Nobody in Scotland would see it, or no Celtic fans would see it. I mean, for three guys standing there, obviously, Micah Richards and Peter Schmeichel there as well, all talking about the situation, and none of them mention his club. I thought it was utterly bizarre.
Worse than that, Scott. Micah Richards was talking to him and saying almost like he was still the Man City goalkeeper.
Aye.
Oh, I saw you out there on the pitch and looking, and as if you were, you must have been desperate just to get out there and be part of the warm-up. Man City player, Micah.
But Peter Schmeichel actually references the Stuttgart game, but doesn't mention Celtic. That's who he was playing for against Stuttgart.
The whole thing is just nowhere near passing a smell test. I'll be really fascinated to see what Martin O'Neill says about this, because ultimately, Martin O'Neill has come out and said, that when there was a kind of a suspicion that maybe he wasn't pleased, Schmeichel, when he lost his place to Sinisalo, then all of a sudden he didn't turn up at Ibrox. So Martin O'Neill was kind of going into bat for Kasper Schmeichel. Look, it's probably best just to wait and see what Martin O'Neill says about it and how he explains it, because I can imagine it. But here's the thing, Scott, right? You've been in your share of dressing rooms, right? Obviously, a while ago. But I'm sure if you were going out onto a pitch, right, and let's just say, for example, it was Mick Gannon. Mick Gannon's in goals, right? And Mick's dislocated his shoulder. You'd be like, Mick, any chance?
He normally looks as if he was playing with one arm anyway.
I Poppadom gloves on. But there's no way that you're going to go out onto that pitch happy about the fact, it's Big Mick, they can't be hardened, but Big Mick's coming out onto the pitch like this. It doesn't work like that. Dressing rooms don't work like that. There would be somebody inside that dressing room that would be making an issue of this, especially as the goals are flying in.
Well,
I just can't understand that.
That's what I was going to say. If you're Callum McGregor, you're watching those goals going against Stuttgart, and then Kelly, that vital game at Rugby Park. At some point, as captain, I think you'd be saying to the manager, or certainly saying to Kasper Schmeichel, look, what's going on here? You're not looking yourself